Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Guthels, and I lead DevRel here at Sentry. And I have been working with this team for a little while now on some of the new AI tools that Sentry has launched in the last couple of months. Today, we're going to be focusing on how you, as an engineer, can debug faster leveraging these tools. And one thing that I really love about the AI tools at Sentry is we didn't just say, every company is adding AI. Let's make sure we include it as well. We did so purposefully. So we're going to be talking with two folks today, Jen and Ram, and they're each going to be explaining a little bit about how we have introduced AI into Sentry to enable you to debug faster and with more confidence. So I will invite Ram up first. But do you want to give yourself a quick introduction, Ram, on who you are and where you're coming from and what you work on here at Sentry?
Sure, Sarah, thanks. So I'm Ram. I'm a senior machine learning engineer at Sentry. Currently, we are very actively working on anomaly detection, which you'll be hearing about a lot soon. I've been at Sentry for about 8 months now, and I come from more big tech companies, Amazon, Uber. I've done a lot of machine learning, data science kind of work before. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's me in a nutshell.
awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Ram. Yeah, I'm really excited. He's going to be telling us more about the anomaly detection and specifically how we are trying to leverage the information that we have and know about kind of how your projects are typically running and how users are typically using it to make sure that you're alerted appropriately when things start to go strange. So then that way you can get in and debug faster and have fewer customers or users be affected by any issues that are happening. Jen, I want to introduce you as well. Do you want to introduce yourself, let people know kind of who you are, what you're working on, and where you're coming from?
Yep. I'm Jen. I'm a machine learning engineer here at Sentry, and I've been here, I guess, 3 years at this point. Before that, I was doing user testings, AI functionality, if you know them. But essentially, what we're working on here is Autofix and issue summary, which you'll see soon, and other generative AI tools, such as one is like it finding what's causing a bug for something or basically a lot of tools that leverage LLMs and help you basically debug faster.
Yep. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Jen. Yeah, so we'll start with Ram and kind of making sure that we're alerted quickly and appropriately on the things that matter. And then we will move over to chatting with Jen. And when you get alerted and you open up that issue and you are trying to familiarize yourself with what's going wrong, why, how, etc., the two features that we're going to be introducing today are our issue summaries and our autofix, which help you identify kind of what's happening, what that root cause might be, what potential fixes might be, and then actually make those fixes fairly quickly. So we've got about an hour today. I want to get started. If you are unfamiliar with what Sentry is as a whole, essentially, and I'll give kind of this, oops. Oh, yes, sorry. Quick housekeeping. Ask your questions in the Q&A if you're in Zoom or in the chat if you're on YouTube. We will send a recording, or if you're watching on YouTube, this is the same link that it'll be. And if you are on Zoom, there will be a survey at the end, so please make sure to fill that out. So a super quick introduction to Sentry, if you are unfamiliar. Sentry is a monitoring platform. Essentially, what we try to do is focus on how we can make debugging more efficient and help you ship with more confidence. Every one of us as engineers have to debug every single day. And we don't want our tools to kind of get in the way of that. We don't want you to have to leave your environment and just spend all day in Sentry. So we try to make Sentry as easy and quick for you to get alerted when there is something wrong in production, get information about what your users were actually experiencing when that something went wrong, and who of your users were experiencing experiencing that. So what kind of devices are they on? What kind of browsers are they using? What kind of mobile devices? And even information like if they are on a mobile device, what was their connectivity? Were they connected? Was it a strong network connection? Or what was their battery life? Or was it plugged in? So whether you're building video games, a full stack web application, a mobile application, or an LLM, as Jen mentioned, we try to support you in debugging faster and shipping with confidence. If you want to learn more about Sentry, there'll be resources throughout, but you should definitely check out one of our upcoming demo sessions where we give you an overall overview and demo of exactly what Sentry can help you with. So I'd like to start though with our anomaly detection. So Ram, I'd like to invite you to come up and share your screen, and let's set the stage here. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, allow you to share yours. Awesome.
Okay.
And let's set the stage here. So you have a working application, and you've got a project here on Sentry, and you are going to demo for us how we would or how how a Sentry user can leverage our anomaly detection that we've recently launched to get alerts on anomalies, basically. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly right, right? Like so, when probably most of our audience is already familiar about how we have this alerting in current setup, right? Like you can actually add alerts on multiple metrics like throughput, transaction duration, right? Like issues and all, and you can set some alerting saying like, hey, alert me if this number or this metric breaches a certain threshold, right? What we have currently is like it's a static one. We say like, hey, if it goes beyond 100 requests per second, alert me, right? Or if the CPU goes beyond 80%, alert me, right?
Right.
We also have a little bit of dynamic thing saying like, hey, we can also set as a percentage value. Like if it crosses beyond a percentage, then do that. But what we actually wanted to do was like take it beyond that, right?
Mhm.
So one of the biggest pain points that we have seen, we ourselves face, and we know like a lot of developers we talk to have been facing, is like many times these static thresholds just don't cut it, right? If you take an example of a restaurant, say like a restaurant sees about 100 food orders at 11:30 in the morning, that's like absolutely normal, right? Like, whereas if they see like even 10 orders in the night and at 3 o'clock in the night, that's abnormal. That needs alerted on, right? So that right there tells you like what is the problem with just having static threshold, right? So
Yeah, no, and I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Because the like you don't want to have predict all of the conditions, right? So even if we were to just say like, here's some conditionals, really Sentry should be able to help determine what those conditionals should be, which is essentially our anomaly detection, right? Because maybe as a store owner, you could say, okay, our hours are at this time, so make sure that if it's outside of this time, alert us. But then maybe there's a holiday, maybe you're doing a 24-hour event, maybe. And so this will hopefully help you get that fine-tuned a little bit easier rather than just relying on someone to manually put that in. That's what I'm really excited about is like, to me, AI is about, when it's in your dev tools in particular, it's about reducing the amount of like manualness that developers have to do, and instead allowing developers to like go back to being engineers. Like, let's think about the more complex challenges. Let's think about the debugging or actually like identifying what issues are and how to make our applications better, or building the next new feature, rather than just like setting up alerts constantly. So I'm so excited for anomaly detection. All right, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, you perfectly said that, right? Like even day-to-day things, right? Like CPU, to guess like, okay, what percentage is a good percentage to alert on, right? Like that's art actually. You have to try it a few times, try to balance like, okay, when we get too much noise versus when we actually get the right signals. So yeah, that's where we are. We wanted to address, right? Like, so here again, coming back to what I'm showing here, this is the alert creation page. So we go here and say, okay, I want to, hold on one sec, my screen. Okay. So we can say like, okay, let's say I want to create an alert on throughput here, right? And then we go ahead and set conditions. This is something like people are using it today, and this existing stuff. And we see like, okay, we can create what we want to alert on. We want to say what duration we want to measure it in and all that. Then comes the threshold part, right? So in threshold, as you see, we have the static, we have a percentage, and then this is the new one, which is the anomaly detection, right? So you enable anomaly detection for a metric alert, and we have a few knobs that gives you some control of what it does, right? So one of the knobs we have is like responsiveness. How sensitive is it to noise, right? So for example, if you have a very noisy metric, you would want the responsiveness to be really low, right? If it is a more stable metric, you would rather want it to be high, right? So that's how it is. And we also have the direction in which the metric is moving, right? There are some metrics which you probably only care for one direction. For example, if you're tracking errors, you don't care if the errors keep dropping and reach zero, but you do want to be alerted if the errors are going up, right? So that's about direction. So those are the two main knobs. Our main idea is to keep it as simple as possible for the developers, and still they have some control, which is also not really tied to the algorithm or systems we are implementing underneath, right? That was our goal here. So
I'm
uh,
noticing also this is still an alpha feature, but I think if users want to give this a try, they just need to turn on early adopters in the settings. Is that correct?
So we don't have it in the early adopters yet. We are like marching towards that. Like next week, we should have that already available. So currently,
Awesome.
what we are doing is like looking for our own set of users, power users who like to use things in the beginning, and we try to set it up for them.
Awesome. Awesome. So you're
Yeah,
getting a sneak peek into what's coming soon.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Very cool.
So I selected like the medium and above, and I just go ahead and add actions. These are all the existing stuff, and then I create the rule, right? So it's as simple as that, creating an alert with anomaly detection enabled. Now behind the scenes, Sentry does a lot of work for this, right? So we actually, in fact, like we evaluated a lot of different approaches to solving this problem. Anomaly detection at scale is a very tough problem. It's the industry is still like grappling with it. So we have done a lot of research, analysis, experiments, and we have put together the system behind this. And we use what is called as matrix profile. So there's an interesting side note there, right? Like right now, LLMs and generative AI is the thing for everything. So we also started with experimenting with those for time series analysis. Surprisingly, both transformer models, LLMs, they're very good at working with time series as well, because fundamentally they are sequences, right? However, what we found was that like matrix profile is a much more faster algorithm and data structure, and it gives us very good performance. So we decided to use matrix profile. That's what is driving our system now, right? So I can go into more details of that later, like if there is any question that comes up, of anybody is interested in diving into that, right? Like we are very excited about the technology. We'd love to talk about it if somebody wants to hear us. So now I'll quickly jump into the end result of this, right? Like we created the alert. Now let's see an alert in action. So here is an example of an alert that fired. Of course, this happened a little way back, like about 20 days back. So what I want to show here is, right, like the our metric has some cyclical nature. There is some cycles going on here, and then suddenly there was a big spike. Our system anomaly detection caught that spike, and we have identified, okay, so this red line marks that it is in alerted status, right? So it alerts, and then finally our system is adaptive, right? Like so it realized that this has become the new normal, so it stops alerting. So that is where the adaptiveness kicks in. So it's like no static threshold here. Everything is dynamic, right? If you're using static threshold, what would have happened here is like somebody steps in and says, hey, now this is our new normal. Let's just change our thresholds to something else, right? Again, trial and error. So yeah, that shows the power of what we have with anomaly detection. I'll pause there.
Yeah, I love that. So, if you aren't familiar with Sentry alerting, you can have alerts be sent to a myriad of different platforms. So you can get Slack alerts, email alerts, I think PagerDuty, Jira. Like, there's just a bunch of different integrations that we have. Sentry supports over 100 languages and frameworks and integrations with almost every dev tool that you're likely using. So where those alerts come out is dependent on kind of how your team works. But what I really love about this, so you did a throughput like detection or alert. That's kind of the category that you're doing here. And it's really interesting to see kind of this where the alert was happening, because that was the anomaly, even though we have other spikes that are not an anomaly, right? And I think that that very much speaks to what is the normal trends of how this application was being used versus just kind of that number or even percentage, because those more absolute values, even percentage, I will call that a kind of a more absolute value. Like it doesn't tell the whole story, right?
Yeah, exactly. One other interesting thing I just want to quickly call out here, right? Like, so you can see like it called it as anomaly, but that alert persisted for some time. Okay, this was something like that we have invested a lot in improving, saying like, okay, when do we say an alert has recovered, or rather the system has recovered, right? Like from that state. So what we have actually done is like in the last week or so, we have actually invested a lot of time in like optimizing when the recovery happens, right? So if the same alert happened now, you would see a recovery that happens right after here. So so
Yep.
we're constantly investing in this and improving it a lot.
Yeah. And that's a good point. So someone did ask in the chat, is this going to be available for all users on all tiers? So we are, as we mentioned, this is still in alpha. We're expecting to go beta in the next week or two. And when we are in beta, it will remain free for the majority of users, depending on kind of how your plan is set up with alerts. First of all, if you do have any questions, please feel free to join our Discord. I'll throw it in the chat here in a moment, but also we'll have it on the last slide. Just discord.gg/Sentry. You can ask any questions that you might have. We have all of our engineers, PMs, and support team available for answering questions. So try it while it's in beta though, because then you can give it a try and you can see how useful it would be for your team, and then determine whether once we do kind of release the pricing, once it's in GA, you can determine more effectively how useful it'll be for you. But I really love this. Someone else asked in the chat as well. So if the erroneous behavior continues for too long, then it might be taken as a norm and not be alerted on. Is that the case? Or, I mean, I think that's always a possibility with things like this, when you're having a computer make decisions, or an algorithm make decisions. But my understanding is like, it is a very it is a very tricky balancing act to not alert too often and become noise that then gets ignored, but then also not alert enough and have really important anomalies go unalerted or undetected. So Ram, do you want to speak a little bit more to that? Again, I think it's a much more detailed conversation, and I think maybe we should follow it up with some like really fun like conversation with just you and I, where we geek out over the actual algorithms that you're using. But do
Yeah,
you want to speak a little bit to that now?
yeah, I can give a 1 minute spiel now and then dig deeper later for sure. So
Awesome.
yes, it is an interesting balance that we have to strike, right? So what we have done is like we're kind of stuck to a window of 28 days. Okay, so basically what that means is that like let's say this pattern repeats within the 28 days. We will kind of ignore the second or third time it happens for sure. We won't alert. But then as things become more normal and the new normalcy again sets in, right? Then when a peak again happens, just like this peak, there is going to be an alert. So it's not like it just this kind of behavior is completely ignored all the time, right? So there is a period of time when we kind of quieten it down. We don't keep surfacing alerts. And after a point, if that pattern again repeats, we start alerting again. So it's a very dynamic, adjustable, I mean, or self-adjusting system.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Awesome. Yeah, if you all have any other questions, we will have time for Q&A at the end. So sometimes it's hard to like come up with a question right right as everyone is speaking. So feel free to kind of save those to the end as well, or start putting them in the Q&A or in the chat. But what I really love about this is that it doesn't require you to change your behavior as a Sentry user or as an engineer. It allows you to just think about this alerting, think about how your team wants to take action when debugging. It allows you to kind of think about that from the perspective of how your application is used versus just from the perspective of when you expect errors to happen. And I think, again, that's what I love about AI when it's done right. And I may be biased, but I think this is an example of when it's done right, is that it allows you to think less about things that a computer should be able to figure out for you. So I'm really excited about this. It's simply just like, think about when you want to be alerted and then let Sentry do the rest. And this graph in particular, I think, is really interesting because it allows you to see how your like I like this overview, and it allows you to potentially get a better understanding of how your application is used in a normal state versus an abnormal state. And I think that's going to be really interesting information to help us better understand where we can optimize our applications in the future as well, or where we might want to focus our debugging efforts in the future. So super excited. Thank you, Ram. Really appreciate it. I did share in the chat a link to a blog post that came out a couple weeks ago, which has additional information about all the features that we're sharing today, as well as links out to additional content and docs and things like that. So feel free to check that out. But I think we will move on and have Jen introduce our issue summaries and our Autofix now. So Ram, if you want to stop sharing your screen, and Jen, if you want to share your screen.
Yep.
Awesome. And so I think where we're going to start out with you, Jen, is this is an error or an issue, and this is actually on our Sentry Seer project, which is where we make all of this stuff, which is kind of cool, very, very meta. And do you want to quickly describe, just like at a high level, what this issue is? And I want to give a caveat. It is very difficult. It was very difficult for Jen to choose an issue because, again, this is on our real project. And so every time there was an issue, we needed to resolve it quickly. So we had to pick one last minute, and it won't be necessarily like all of the features that you might see with issue summary and autofix, but Jen will call those things out. But yeah, tell us a little bit about what this issue is.
Yeah, so this issue is actually like a current ongoing bug with our Flask app that runs our ML inference, right? So it's trying to initialize the SQL Alchemy database twice. And you can see that it's calling this line, the deviated app, multiple times, so it should be done once. And it also has all Sentry bells and whistles, a suspect commit and a session replay, looking at what it is, and a full trace all the way from front end. Looks like you also have a n+1 query here. But yeah, so, like Sarah said, this isn't the most ideal fix because we're still like thinking through and trying to find the root cause of what is actually causing this. But so far, Autofix has actually been really, really useful. So that's why I wanted to show this one.
Yeah, so you might be familiar with this issue view if you've been using Sentry for a while. If you haven't used Sentry too much, just to kind of reemphasize what Jen said, we have all of like a bunch of information on this view. And depending on what the issue is, who you are on your team, what your application is doing, different parts of this issue view are going to be more useful for you. If it's like a very front end heavy application, you might want to leverage session replay and actually see what the users were doing and kind of what was happening before, during, and after an issue happened. If this is a full stack application where you're calling a bunch of other services that you provide, then that trace view might be more useful. And then we have a bunch of additional kind of data that is sprinkled throughout every view that'll be useful for you. But sometimes, let's say you are on call or you're newer to the team, it can be a little daunting to figure out all of the information and kind of understand it quickly. And so that's what this more or this newer solutions hub, which is currently in beta, is going to offer us and gives us, first of all, like this issue summary. So Jen, do you want to describe a little bit about like what this is?
Yep. So think of issue summary as like the TLDR for your bug, essentially like summarizing the essentials, the key points of an issue before you dive into the full report, which is all the Sentry data we have here. And there are essentially three things that can show up here. Here you'll see two, but I'll go to the first one first. So this is the what's wrong. So first and foremost, it's what we think the problem is. And for this case, you see it says it's a runtime error saying a DB instance is already registered, which is actually correct. That's very straightforward. Um, this other section, possible cause, is essentially a surface level hypothesis of what we think could be causing the issue. And like I said earlier, this is actually spot on. That the SQL alchemy is being initialized twice for some reason. Um, sometimes there will be another section called in the trace. What that is essentially if there is any useful or valuable insights from across the trace, as you can see here, it will surface them. But for this case, I mentioned this other error, right? The n+1 error, and like probably a couple more here. It's not actually relevant to this issue at all. That's why we only have two here.
So that's what I really love about the Solutions Hub and the issue summary is it's not just a static grab information from these fields that Sentry's already has insights on, but it is actually leveraging AI to determine what is most useful for you when you open up an issue. You got alerted from an anomaly, thanks to Rom. Now you're opening up this issue, and before you dive into the details, you can quickly see what is the likely most important thing that you need to focus on. So since that trace information is not super useful for this particular issue, yes, it might be something you want to look into as well, but it's not likely the root cause of this issue. We're not going to surface it here in the Solutions Hub. So even though you don't get to see that in this example, I think that's a perfect reason why this AI feature is more useful than just getting kind of a TLDR version of this entire page. And what I really love is kind of this kind of like three-tiered approach, where it's like, let's get that TLDR, let's have this be understandable by us engineers in English at a high level. Let's get some relevant detailed information and insights if it is relevant. And then let's give some possible root causes or possible causes to why this might be an issue. And then you can either go about your debugging as you normally would and leverage all of the information here on the page, or we can jump into something else that Jen's going to show us now.
Yep. So you have this pretty pink button right here called Open Autofix. So think of Autofix like a very intelligent rubber ducky that has the ability to search through your connected code base and your Sentry data. And while we talk over this, I'll just hit this button to start Autofix. And it even says right here it's a rubber ducky. But it essentially takes all the context you saw in this issue, the issue summary, and actually like we actually have like some reasoning and some data that was pulled out when we processed the issue summary that's also passed to Autofix. So these two essentially work in tandem together. As you can see, right now it's searching for the potential root cause of the issue. And while it does that, it'll come up with little insight cards like this one. So it says that the SQL Alchemy instance is liquidly initialized during a flash startup, right? So it's supposed to be bringing up these insights that surface valuable information about the issue that will help you debug. So like it may be called autofix, and we're not actually like completely trying to fully fix the issue for you. We realize that like oftentimes it's just much more useful to just throw you all this useful debugging context so you don't have to search around yourself.
When I think, if you're an engineer, like very rarely is there going to be a bug that got through to production where the fix is literally like a typo that you would 100% trust an AI to fix for you and just immediately deploy, right? Like that is not a super likely scenario. The likely scenario is that if it got all the way to production and you're opening up the Solutions Hub to get help from Sentry to debug this, it is a fairly complex issue. So what I really love about the Solutions Hub and Autofix in general is, yes, we do eventually get to, and Jen will show, we do eventually get to helping you open up a PR on GitHub with Autofix suggestions. However, before we get there, we need to make sure that we as engineers and we like the AI are on the same page, that we agree. We might have some context that Sentry doesn't have, or Sentry might have context that we don't have. So these types of insights, I think, are super critical throughout this process to keep them, to keep you as an engineer, as a human, kind of abreast to what the AI is leveraging and the assumptions and the hypotheses that the AI is making to give you that potential root cause or that potential fix. So, you know, if you read that kind of TLDR of that insight there and you're like, yes, I think that's true, I don't really need to go into all the details, I think that's totally fine. You might also notice that as Jen was clicking into that insight, there were links over to GitHub. There's that little GitHub icon over there in the corner. If you do have the GitHub integration and your source maps and everything, then just like when you're looking at the stat trace in the regular issue view, you can actually link out and go look at these in GitHub as well. So yeah, if you want to kind of dive in to see what more detailed information Autofix was leveraging to be able to create this insight, you can do that. Or if you just trust that that is true, then you can continue through to the root cause analysis, which Jen will kind of talk about now.
Yep. Yep. But one more thing actually is
Yeah,
if you don't agree with
good
an
point.
insight, you can actually hit this button called rethink from here. So we've built Autofix to like fully be like a human in a loop workflow, like we said, a rubber ducky, not like an AI oracle. So you can always pick any of these, type anything in, and basically interject with your own context or like direct the AI at any time. Um, yeah, so now you've seen it has come up with a, potential root cause, and let's see what it says. So yeah, it says it's initializing SQL Alchemy twice due to a seller configuration flow, which it's calling boot up in our celery instance. So what it does here it essentially gives you like a natural in words explanation of what it thinks is causing this issue, right? And again, it provides all the relevant context and like sources of why it thinks this way with the GitHub links that Sarah mentioned earlier as well. Um, so if this root cause looks good to you, you can basically use Autofix as a rubber ducking debugging tool and go look at the bug, go fix it yourself. Or if you think this is something um, Autofix can just tackle, you can just ask Autofix to find a fix. So you can either use this selected root cause and provide any extra instructions with the fix, such as I guess in this case, make sure celery doesn't call it. And you can hit find a fix, or you can also always hit this and propose your own root cause if this is not correct. But let's go with this one with this instruction. Um, and same here, while it's creating a fix, it will again search through your code base to find out the best way to tackle this problem. And again, comes up with relevant like insights on the way, which you will see popping up soon.
And this is again like what I really love about AI tools that are embedded in dev tools where we're thinking about kind of what is most useful for an engineer is, yes, again, we've got the root cause, we could do the rethinking, but there might be something that is like seemingly unrelated to this that maybe Autofix didn't pick up on. And before we have Autofix create the fix, we might want to give that additional context to say, you know, make sure that this isn't, you know, doing XYZ, or make sure that you're including this, or make sure you add in a unit test, or I don't know, something like that, where we just want to give that additional information about that potential fix before we even get to that point. So then that way we don't have to spend as much time fixing the fix, right? So it looks like we got one already though.
Yep. So once this fix is ready, it's going to show you like a diff of all the files it edited. So it looks like it edited these two files, right? And we make it really easy for you to iterate on this. So you can always, like, if you see this insight thinks it's going the wrong direction, you can always hit reflict again. Or if you wanted to make a change, like, for example, you wanted to use this other helper function, not the one it's using here, you can give it feedback in the text box. Or if you want unit tests, you can add tests. Or once this is ready for PR, you can hit this button, create PR. But for now, looking at this one, let's say we don't like that it added this new line, right? You can always hit reject each specific change it makes. So I still want to keep this, so I hit reject. Or I want, I don't know, boot up core to be called boot up something. I can literally just edit its code change in a like collaborative manner with it. So now I guess this looks good. I can just hit approve changes to create a PR on GitHub.
I love that you can remain kind of in your debugging context within Autofix with all of the information that's relevant to you with the issue and kind of all of that detailed information and make those changes before we get to the PR, because something that is difficult for me is when I change kind of environments, even just like a new tab, like I lose kind of where I was in that debugging process. So then now I'm in more of like a review phase, and I don't want to spoil it, but like draft PR, thank you. I don't want my CI running like right when I open this up.
Yep. So it makes this draft PR with like a description of what it does. So if it's not you who's reviewing this, it's like some other teammate, they understand the context of why. And we also link straight back to a Sentry issue, so they can review it too. And they can also click into the autofix and just see how we got here as well. But as you can see, it made these code changes. So I think um, we're probably good to go. For this one bug, though, like I said, it's kind of tricky, so it might take us more time to review this one. That's something we have time for on the call. Yeah.
Yeah, probably something that you'll continue to do after after this workshop's done. This is awesome. And then we have additional AI features that we're not covering on this one particular, but with integrations with CodeCov, you can automatically create unit tests for fixes as well, which is great. And yeah, make sure that like there are no like once this is deployed, if it does introduce any new issues, you know, we have other integrations with GitHub where we will notify you on any closed PRs that have already been merged that a new issue might have stemmed from it. These are all things that we've launched in the past, but again, kind of help you create a more effective debugging experience where you have the information that you need inside of Sentry. You're able to identify root cause, be confident about that, identify a suggested fix, be confident about that, open up a PR, get that merged quickly, you know, reviewed, merged, and deployed, and hopefully reduce the amount of time spent trying to figure out the issues, and therefore reducing the amount of time or the amount of users that are affected by these issues. So yeah, I I think there was a couple of other questions, but I want to give people a chance. Please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A, or if you're on YouTube, in the chat, and we will start to answer them. I know there were a couple that have already been answered, that you all asked in the chat. So we've got that. Someone did ask, would you integrate for more CCS progression? I'm going to be honest, this is a little, I'm not sure what you mean by that. So Jen or Ram, if you are familiar with what they mean by that, feel free. Otherwise, you can also let me know if you want to add more information. I'm wondering if maybe you're talking about kind of the environmental impact of the LLMs. I think that's beyond the scope of this particular call, but as we were talking about, like if we do want to go into more details about exactly how the AI is built out and kind of what considerations we're taking in that and things like that, I think we can definitely do that in the future. But for now, we're focused more on kind of how these features are affecting your debugging throughout your system. Um, so yeah, I think I'm going to check. Are you able to create PRs through Bitbucket? So in this Autofix right now, we are focused on our GitHub integration where we have the most robust integration, but definitely we have plans to add other Git providers in the future, like Bitbucket. All right, does Autofix help with code coverage? Great question. Ram or Jen, do you want to take that?
Yep. So if if you saw in the last part before we created the PR, there's an option to add new tests for that specific functionality or the code that Autofix fixed. Actually, surprisingly enough, that functionality for new test generation was actually made by Ram, not me. Fun fact.
Do you want to add more information, Ram? I think you're muted.
Oh, just wanted to add another quick note. Like, note there is also a parallel initiative within Sentry, which you'll be hearing about more, right? Like, where we are introducing automated test generation. So not just this sort of fix related, but in general, you can add tests to the code, right? Like, so there is that coming too. So there are a lot of interesting
Yes.
things happening for us.
Definitely. I will share a link to that as well. We have, because of our partnership and our integrations with CodeCov, which we acquired almost 2 years ago now. I don't know. It's been too long. We do have better flaky test detection and AI test generation that is definitely something that you could leverage. Someone also asked, just on the same note, assuming you need CodeCov in addition for code coverage. So yes and no. We do have, yes, you need code coverage. Sorry, yes, you need CodeCov for code coverage. However, we do have a GitHub Copilot integration. And with that, you could actually get some of the AI test generation without having the full CodeCov report. However, it's likely more effective if you're using full CodeCov, which we do have free developer plans for that as well. Someone asked, what is the accuracy of the fixes? And I think this is something that like we're always going to be improving on, obviously, and part of why we are remaining in beta as we make sure that it is, again, similar to what I was mentioning with ROMs, anomaly detection. We want to make sure that if you're spending the time to debug with our solutions hub and our auto fixes, we don't want you wasting that time and coming up with a fix that is so inaccurate that like you could have just started from the beginning, right? So we are being more cautious and ensuring that we're not creating a bunch of extra noise, but rather actually giving you insights that will make it faster for you to ship more confidently those fixes. But Jen or Ram, do you have any other details you want to provide on that?
Yeah. So on the accuracy of fixes, we run Autofix on an internal benchmark built from known Sentry issues and known fixes. We're still working on a like a public probably a public release of these like accuracy scores in some form or another sometime soon, probably sometime in January, maybe. But our internal scores are for fixing bugs, it fixes 55% of them, and the root cause is correct 94% of the time.
That's amazing. And again, as we mentioned, like the reason why it's set up as a conversation is because if you are leveraging, as the solutions of the autofix in Sentry, you are likely already to a point where this issue is fairly complex. So I would say like the root cause analysis being correct 94% of the time is is amazing. And that will already give you a lot more insights into where you could like make the fix than not having it. And so 55% for the actual auto fix, just kind of working out of the box. I can't imagine how much time that's going to save, to be honest. That is awesome. Someone did ask about the Copilot integration. We actually do have a blog post on that as well, which I will share with you all right now. Let me find it. And if there are any other questions as well, let me know. Let's see. Where is it? I will find it. I will put it in the chat shortly. But are there any other questions?
Sarah, I think there are a few more questions about availability in general, right? Like when anomaly
Yes.
detection, I think there were some more questions that came up about that as well as autofix availability. Maybe it'll be worth just quickly touching on that for both.
Yeah, definitely. Do you wanna take that?
Sure, yeah. So I think somebody else was also asking about anomaly detection. So right now it is in a limited availability, which means like we have a few alpha users trying it out, but we'll soon have it in a beta environment where you can turn it on yourself in like a week or two. That's the timeline that we're working towards right now. In terms of Autofix, do you want to talk about that, Jen?
So Autofix and issue summary are already in beta right now. So all you need to do to get Autofix issue summary is to just go into your early adopter page and sorry, the settings page and turn on the early adopter toggle. Very soon, after the holidays, probably we're planning on enabling it for everyone as an open beta. But for now, you need that toggle.
And then again, I wanted to reemphasize, definitely check out discord.gg/Sentry. If you have any questions, we've got like a Q&A forum there, and then also just kind of a general chat. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask there. And if you aren't a Sentry user yet, we encourage you to try out Sentry. There is a bit.ly link right there, and I will also share that in the chat. Try Sentry AI workshop. So we encourage you to give Sentry a try. This is a 14-day free trial. But again, we do have free developer tiers. We do have options to self-host, and then we have very generous team and business plans as well. The biggest difference between developer, team, and business is really just kind of some of the functionalities you would need if you had larger teams. And you can always adjust kind of your quotas for how you're leveraging different areas of Sentry and kind of purchase extra spans if you're really heavy on kind of the performance things. So it's very much kind of what is most useful for you. How are the trials with CodeCov and these new features for existing Sentry customers? So since these features are included, especially while they're in beta, in all of our plans, then you should be able to just use them if you're a current Sentry user. So you don't necessarily need anything special for that. You might need to, as we've mentioned already, you might need to turn on early adopters in your settings, though. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much. Really excited for these new features. I'm very eager to see how it helps you all debug faster and ship more confidently. I know I say that a lot, but like that's been my number one thing. I'm like, how can we do this? How can we reduce the amount of just like hassle that we all have to deal with on a daily basis? So really excited to hear about how you all are using these AI tools. Ram, Jen, thank you so much for coming on and giving us a demo and kind of giving us a little bit of behind the scenes. As you all use these features, please share on social media, share in Discord, give us feedback. As a reminder, we are fair source. So a lot of our projects are also on GitHub. We have discussions there, issues that you can open. So we encourage you to participate in our community and give us feedback so that we can make sure that what we're building is most effective for you. Please, if you're watching on Zoom, please fill out the feedback survey so that we can ensure that as we do more of these events, they are more useful for you. And with that, I think we will go ahead and end. Thank you everyone for joining.